Imagine you began your life with all the money you'll ever have. The instant you were born, you were given one account, and anytime you've had to pay for anything, it's come out of that account. You don't need to work, but everything you do costs money. Food, water, housing, and consumer goods are as expensive as ever, but now even sending an email requires some of your precious funds. Sitting quietly in a chair doing nothing costs money. Sleep costs money. Everything you encounter in life requires you spend money. The problem is this: you don't know how much money is in the account. And when it runs dry, your life is over. If you found yourself in this situation, would you live the same way? Would you do anything differently? This is a fantasy, but change one key element, and it's not that far from our actual situation as human beings. Only instead of money, our limited account has a limited amount of time, and we don't know how much. It's an everyday sort of question: how should we spend our time? But because of the brevity and uncertainty of life, it's also a profound question and has major implications on our health and happiness. So these words and this idea are not my own. They're from Robert Waldinger and Marc Schulz from their fantastic book, The Good Life. But I read them regularly and I reflect on them, because the idea of pausing and reflecting on how finite life is can help you, or at least helps me, to remember how short but how precious every moment is, and therefore encourages me to live with intentionality. I mean, the reality is we just don't know how long we have on this earth. We might live 5 years or 80 years, but either way, it's just a heartbeat. Our life disappears so quickly, and therefore our time is so important. How we use our time is how we use our life, which is what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about how to think differently about your life, how to reflect on life's moments, and how to make intentional choices with the time you have left. So let me first back up and talk about where this quote came from. It's from the Good Life study, or more officially called the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which is the most robust longitudinal study conducted by the Harvard University. Basically, it started in 1938. That's a long time ago, and has continued for 85 years. And researchers studied a group of wealthy, middle-class sophomores in Harvard, as well as inner-city Boston boys from disadvantaged, crime-ridden suburbs, and then tracked their lives and the lives of their children and the lives of their grandchildren, and eventually, I think, will include the lives of their great-grandchildren. Needless to say, it's a fantastic study to discover what makes humans truly happy over a lifetime. And that's why we need to pay attention. And here's what the researchers discovered. They essentially discovered two things out of years and years and years of study. And this is why we need to pay attention. The first big finding is that relationships matter. The quality of our relationships with friends, with family, with people in our lives is the number one predictor of health and happiness over a lifetime. More than fame, more than money, more than success, more than a lot of the things that we tend to chase. Relationships and quality relationships matter the most. The second big finding relates to the first, that humans are terrible at predicting what's actually good for us. We tend to spend so much of our time on activities that don't deliver lasting health and happiness at the expense of the types of relationships and connections with loved ones that truly matter. And I think that is confronting for me, but it's confronting for all of us when we think about our precious time and how we use our precious funds. And this is why I love my job, because I'm a time management consultant. And that means I'm helping people reflect on the meaning of their life. Your time is your life. The two concepts are intricately linked, and yet we spend our time doing things that just don't deliver health and happiness. I love the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman, which is about the philosophy of time. And what I like about the book is he talks about time and he compares it with money. And he says, time is not like money. You see, we use money. We spend money, we buy with money, we save, we invest, we divest money. But money is something that we use. It profoundly impacts our time and our life. It impacts the way we live and the experiences we have. But essentially, there's our life, and then there's money, and there's a separateness between them. But the same is not true with our time. You see, what Oliver Burkeman suggests is that we are time, not in some kind of creepy, weird way, but the reality is that every minute of your life that is spent is actually a minute of your life that you'll never get back. The 6 or 8 or 10 minutes you spend watching this YouTube video are 6 or 8 or 10 minutes you'll never get back. That is your life. I hope it's been worth it. But seriously, when we use our time, we use our life. And I think that is profoundly important to recognize because you can't get it back. In other words, according to Oliver Burkeman, time is finite. Therefore, we're finite. So that changes the game. Once you truly accept that the time you spend is your life, well, then you stop and you start to think about what do you start to put in your precious time cup first, and what do you allow to flow out. You also come to the conclusion that you can't possibly do everything. It's impossible to get it all done. So therefore, what matters most, and how can you actually spend your time on the things that matter? I just find this very, very encouraging and challenging, but it helps me think, okay, why am I spending my time on this? And what might I do instead? Relationships, friendships, connections with people are super important. And yet I tend to neglect time with people I love because I'm so busy doing emails, chasing meetings, doing that next thing that I feel like I need to do, or simply scrolling my phone and trying to keep myself entertained. Once you really grasp that life is finite and that you have a short amount of time, it kind of pushes you into thinking a bit more deeply about what you do day by day, minute by minute, so that you can make it count. And I think that's really helpful. So in the words of James, who is the brother of Jesus, who we read in the Bible, he says, "What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes." And while that may sound grim, it may sound grim that our life is mist or a breath that disappears quickly. I actually find that really encouraging. And I think you probably can too. Because when I think about how small and quick my life is, it forces me to do two things. And they're beautiful things. The first thing it forces me to do is to be grateful and thankful and to appreciate every moment. Because if life is short, if it disappears so quickly, if it's like a breath that comes one day and disappears the next, well, then it matters what I do with it. I'm learning to appreciate the fact that I can breathe fresh air, that I can see my family, that I can wake up and have a new day. I'm learning to appreciate that I have meaningful work. I'm learning to appreciate that I live in a beautiful place where there's trees. I'm learning to appreciate the friends and people in my life. I'm learning to appreciate life in a way that I didn't before I recognized how short and fleeting it is. And I think many people have that experience. So the first thing that happens is we learn to appreciate life more, to practice gratitude, and to be grateful for what is. And the second thing we do, or that we can do when we recognize how small life is that we learn to be more intentional in how we use our precious time. And maybe more intentional in what we try not to spend our time on as well. Now, I'm on YouTube. I'm clearly creating a video for you. But honestly, so much of how we use our time online doesn't really add much. And it actually distracts from the very people that are around us. It distracts from building real relationships in real time, in real places with people we love. And when you look back at the end of the march of time, at the lives of people who have been studied from birth to death, the research is clear. It's the people we spend time with, the people we laugh with and cry with, who we connect with, who we eat with, who we share life with, in person, up close, undistracted. They're the people who will shape the quality of our lives. So therefore, let's not get distracted by the things that are online or the things that we want to chase or the wealth that we need to pursue. Let's actually invest in the relationships around us, because that tends to be what makes people happy rather than many of the things we tend to chase. But whatever it is for you, what does it look like for you to be intentional and deliberate in how you use your time? What does it look like for you to do less of the meaningless, distracting things that take away your attention and to spend more time enriching your life, loving people, and doing the types of things that you'll look back on at the end of your life and think, wow, that was time well spent and a life well lived. So let me finish with a Buddhist saying, if only death is certain and the time of death is uncertain, well then what should I do? It's a pretty important question. We'll all pass away at one stage, that's for certain. We don't know when that is. So how do we use the precious moments we have left? Who do you want to love? How do you want to live? And how might you use this next moment in a way that is joyful, meaningful, and helps you make space? See you next time.